you're also altering the status of other bases for the winter.
Yeah, I mean, there's a general reduction in traffic due to demand, but what's different about Ireland is that if you take the two regional airports in Cork and in Shannon, it also affects Kerry and Knock as well, where you have, from the Minister of Transport, we have the green list means that the government policy at the moment is to advise people not to travel to any EU countries, whereas in most of the other EU countries at the moment, there's some level of travelling, and then you've got to sort of deal with the COVID restrictions as they are in each country, but at least there's a basis of those other European countries. But in Ireland, there isn't any, and we can't fly around aircraft with 5 and 6 people, and we've signalled this to the Minister all throughout the summer, and nothing has been done to replace that list. And unfortunately, we've had to communicate to our people this morning, 135 people in Cork and Shannon, that we won't be flying this winter.
The question of being a bit premature on this, because the government is moving towards this European traffic light system. We haven't got there yet, nor indeed has Europe got there quite yet. So maybe people would think you should have stayed your hand.
But Pat, there's a sort of a misunderstanding on this. I mean, the traffic, don't forget, the difference between Ireland and the rest of Europe is Ireland has a green list, discredited green list, which means that no countries are open. But this morning, you can, in Germany, Italy, and France, Sweden, Norway, you can fly intra-European at the moment. There are some restrictions, I think, out of Hungary and places like that. So they're looking at the traffic light system as to how this will make a sort of a homogenous approach to how people will go into each of those countries. So people can't actually, or governments can't close them down. The difference between Europe and Ireland is we didn't do anything all summer. We discouraged people from travelling. We had a disproportionate effect on travel. And instead of actually putting something in place, this minister didn't do anything. So he today could have adopted the traffic light system without any agreement from anyone. Because if I go to Germany this morning, I can fly to Ireland, I can fly to Italy, I can fly to France. But we have now no aviation policy, no travel policy whatsoever from this Minister for Transport, and nothing has been done. And you know that we've been going on about this since last July. Everyone else has been travelling, albeit we are cognizant of that there are rising COVID rates, and that there are going to be travel restrictions in any event, and there's going to be we've got to deal with the confidence issue. But you have to at least give an airline a fighting chance of doing that. And this traffic light system would have given regionalisation, so you can fly to different regions within the EU. And what people have to understand is that airlines have to plan. We have given 3 press releases on this. We've talked to the Dáil committee. And look at it, Pat. When have you ever seen Ryanair, Aer Lingus, the DAA, and all the airports and everybody, the aviation task force in this country, saying the same thing? And nothing was done. And our understanding was at the Council of Ministers the other day that this minister didn't make one contribution at that meeting the other day about the traffic light system. Didn't make one contribution, and we're an island nation, and what's going to happen here, not only at the end of this winter, but what's going to happen next summer. We need an aviation policy, and we haven't got it.
How many people are going to be affected by your decisions at your bases? How many people will be out of a job?
Well, it's because of the efficiency and how we run our operation. It is it's obviously important to our people, our pilots and cabin crew. And it's at 135 people for the winter. It's what they deliver in terms of connectivity and what it's going to do for tourism as we make our way into 2021. People have to make plans. Travel agents make plans, or tour operators, and likewise with an airline like Ryanair, we have to make plans. That's the way the nature of the travel industry. And today, there is no aviation policy from this minister. He hasn't done anything with his own aviation task force. There are 12 recommendations. None of them recommended. They claim to have taken this task force by the job support scheme. Sure, the job support scheme is for everybody in the economy. There is nothing for aviation whatsoever. And, lip service to 10 million euros to Cork and Shannon in the budget is nonsense.
I mean, there is the impression, because we have a Green minister, a cynic has just texted me, Eamon Ryan will only be happy when there's a cycle lane down the middle of runway 23 at Dublin Airport. But you can understand why people who want to get moving might be wary of the green input into all this. Let's park that for the moment. But the fact that we don't really have a regime when people arrive in the country, as they have in other countries, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, Bermuda, where I'm familiar with, and other places where you arrive, you're checked, or you go to a hotel, you're tested again and again. We don't do any of that stuff. It's all kind of volunteer.
We've had 6 months to do it, and all as we've heard is that we're talking about it, we're having a meeting, we're adopting the traffic light system. They haven't adopted the traffic light system. The Council of Ministers the other day decided that they were going to have a system to build on already a Europe that is already open, albeit with restrictions within Europe. But we don't have one at the moment. And you can't have an aviation policy and we might get around to it. You've got to plan. You've got to plan for your schedules. You've got to plan with other airports. We should have the summer done for next year with Cork and Shannon. And we can't even start because there isn't even a policy. Now, we would plan with some degree of uncertainty, but we will now be able to plan in other airports. And the worry here is that those aircraft won't come back.
Now, the question from a listener is, does closing the bases mean that there won't actually be Ryanair flights coming in, or will it simply mean there won't be aircraft based at Shannon and Cork, but Ryanair flights can come in from other European airports?
They can come in from other European airports, but looking at the schedule this morning, it'll be cut by over 90%. And if you look at Cork, it will still have flights from Poland and Stansted, albeit on a much reduced schedule. When you have a based aircraft, you just get more destinations out of that. And you can also do business traffic because the originating traffic out of Cork first thing in the morning, to London makes it convenient for business people. But what you're going to have to wait for is the aircraft to come in, say, from London at the other end, and that won't really support business that will need that connectivity. So the difficulty with aviation is that it doesn't just bounce back. You've got a plan, and we've had no plans from this minister for the last 6 months. I've had one meeting for 30 minutes with this minister. Went to the Shannon for the Transport Committee. Sure, we couldn't even ask them any questions. When we got on to make our case, they left they left the chamber. We couldn't even get to put questions to them. And you would think before they go to Europe, and we were calling for this last week, would they go and champion this new traffic light system and what we were going to do for Ireland? He didn't say a word at the meeting, apparently. Not one word for connectivity for Ireland at the Council of Ministers meeting.
Yeah. I know you're under time pressure, so I'll ask you one last thing. And looking around, we've heard about London, Tier 2 restrictions just announced a few minutes ago. The Netherlands, semi-lockdown, bars and restaurants closed. The Czech Republic, primary schools, pubs, restaurants closed. So it's happening all over the place, and they'd be pointing the finger just at our government as we see this second wave growing. Maybe you're being too hard on them, because others are doing these kind of things.
Yeah, but what's different is, if you look at, say, the UK restrictions, even in the worst affected areas, they say you can travel to and from airports. So to have a fighting chance for airlines, you at least have to have the basis for travel. We will have to deal with the confidence issues of passengers and the rate of COVID. But what is different about Ireland is, it is our policy is driven by inertia. Nothing has happened in 6 months. Zero. And it's not just Ryanair, Aer Lingus, the DAA, and any of the airports in this country will say that there is no aviation policy and there is no follow-up from this minister. And unless we do it, you're going to, even when we get a vaccine as a launching pad for the resurgence of the aviation industry, that the capacity will be gone from Ireland at that stage. It's no good talking about it next summer.
CEO of Ryanair, Eddie Wilson.